Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And of course, we are working on the menorah. If we're fortunate, we may be able to take care of the menorah this week. There are just so many details to it. And I am going to go into the text and let me see if it's possible to add a share. I don't know if I can do that. Just says new share. Don't think it allows me to share more than one thing at a time. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at here where we're actually at in the description. I tried to do some, go ahead. Here we are. There we are. All right. So here, God is, we just started, this is just right. You shall make a menorah. So we're just describing the various components of the menorah. But when I say components, they're not components in the sense of being made separately and then connected to each other. They're the various elements because we're told very clearly that he's to take a talent of gold and beat this all out of this one solid piece of metal. So, at any rate, we were discussing the various little parts of it. And of course, I will show you an illustration in a moment as to what that is. And I'm going to have to sort of flip back and forth. So, kaftoreha. By the way, that's the word we use in modern Hebrew for a button. But Rashi says, in this case, Yemin tapuchim agulim. They're like spherical apples. Saviv, okay, I'm sorry, I think agulim savim the saviv needs to go agulim. So we're talking about two adjectives here, right? Or circular, spherical around, right? Boltin svivot hakaneh, which stick out, boltin, to stick out around the branch, the middle branch of the candlestick. The kaneh can mean a reed, but it's talking, in this case, Jastrow says we can translate it as a branch of a candlestick. But this is the middle branch, Yederich she'osin, in the manner that they do the menorot, to those candlesticks or candelabras, chelifnei hasarim, that are before the princes. In other words, this is I am going to assume that context makes it a majestic looking candlestick. And of course, it was large, right? It was a large candlestick. So the idea that this being the kind of candlestick that you would find in a palace makes it so beautiful and appropriate that this should be in the shrine of the tabernacle. The Korin Lahin, and it looks to me that this is like that modern word, I believe, pomei. I may be spelling it wrong, but that means apples. Apples. Uminyan shelahim, and the number that there are of these apples, if we're going to call them that, right? Katuv b'parsha is written in this paragraph. Kama kaftorin botin mimena. How many of these kaftorim, these spheres, stick out from it? But kama halak or chelek sheben kaftor kaftor, and the amount of space between, in other words, the smooth area on the branch between one and the other. So I'm going to go ahead now and see about, let's see what this is saying. Okay, but it's not what okay, maybe it is an advanced sharing option. But let me go back to this picture, which is not ideal, but here is the kaftor. They're calling it a knob. You see that? Okay, so there are these knobs here that are in the central, as you can see, the central shaft. And this illustration, by the way, here, I actually saw another illustration. I'm going to look for it again that's slightly different, and that has knobs coming out here on the branches as well, which is part of the text here. But at any rate, to give you an idea of these, and here you can see in this particular one how they have these knobs here, and they put one here. That would be that too. So let's go back into the other share. Let's see if I can. And here we are. So let's keep going with this text. So now we're onto something ufrachim. Perach, of course, means a flower, but Rashi explains, tiurin, these are illustrations, pictures, asuyinba, that are made on these knobs. Okay, I'll take their translation. Kemin prachin, which look like flowers, and of course you did see that in when we were looking before. I won't go back right for a moment. Mimena yihiyu, they will be from it. Hakol miksha, everything is beaten out. Yotzeh mitoch chatichat ha'eshet, it all is extruded from one, if that's a good word to use here, from one piece of metal. Velo yasem hish, it shouldn't be made levadam separately. Vayad became, and then he could solder them together, or at least attach them together. So you can see why Moses might have needed an illustration of this menorah, because the description is really challenging, even if you're very good at at being able to sort of see it in your own mind's eye. So going on, the Shisha Kanim, 6 branches, Yotzim Mitzida, come out from its side. Shlosha Knei Menorah Mitzida Ha'echad, 3 branches of the menorah from its one side. Ushlosha Knei Menorah Mitzida Hasheni, and 3 branches of the menorah from its second side. I think that's relatively easy to to visualize, and but nevertheless, I am going to go back in here just to clarify for sure, right? So this is what we're talking about, right? 3 branches coming out of one side, 3 branches coming out of the other side. I'm going to go back now into the text again. Let's take a look at Rashi. Yotzim mitzideha, I think it is. Let me make sure I said it. Yeah, mitzideha. The yud is what's telling me that it should be mitzideha. Lachan ulachan, in one direction and in the opposite direction. But alachson, that means in a diagonal. Nimshachim ve'olim, they are drawn out and go up ad keneged govha shel menorah, until they reach the height of the menorah, shehu kaneha emse'eh, meaning the height of the middle branch. The yotzim mitoch kaneha emse'eh, and they come out of from the midst of the middle branch, ze lamala mizeh, one above the other. Again, if you have a picture of this, you can understand exactly what it's saying. Hatachton aroch, the bottom branch is long. V'shalmala katsar hemenu, and the one above it is slightly shorter than it. V'halyon katsar memenu, and the top branch is, of course, shorter than it. Lefi shehaya govha rashehen shaveh, and that is because the tops of these branches were at the same level, legov shel kaneha emsa'i, to the top, to the middle branch, Hashvi'i, which would be the seventh branch in a sense. Shemimenu yotzim hashisha kanim, from which the 6 branches are extracted. Let me again go to that, just for clarification, right? This is exactly what we're describing. So you can see exactly, and now they all reach up to the same top. So far, this is, I think, pretty clear, and looks pretty good. As I said, I'm going to see if I can find another illustration which is slightly different from this one, but we'll get into the language and see how it's capable of that. So I'm going to go back now into the text. Please, if you have any questions, just raise your hands and I'll try and recognize you. Okay, here we go. Shlosha gevi'im meshukadim. 3 cups meshukadim engraved, the kaneha echad. So remember we said that there were these flowers, these illustrations of flowers on the gevi'im, and here of this gevi'ah, and on the kaftor, right? The kaneha echad, right? So 3 cups, engraved cups on one branch, kaftor v'ferach, a knob and a flower. So okay, so if we say perach, we might understand that to mean the engraving, that flower, engraved flower. So it's just a little bit ambiguous, okay? Because when we say meshukadim, we understand we're talking about these cups. But when it says kaftor, a knob and a flower, right? That's not so clear as to what it's talking about. I'll try to get back into the illustration and see if I can show you what I'm talking about. Ushlosha givi'im meshugadim b'kaneha echad. Again, and 3 engraved cups in each, in other words, in each branch, kaftor v'ferach, right? A knob and a flower. Kain l'sheshet hakanim, so it should be done for all 6 branches, hayotzim min ha-menorah, that come out of the menorah. So let me see, let's take a look at the Rashi here. So meshukadim, right? He says meshukadim, it's just the way it's translated. Ketargumo, we're gonna follow the Targum's translation here as to what meshukadim means. Mitsuyarim. So it means engraved in this case. Mitsuyarim hayu, they were engraved kederech she'osin leklei kesef v'zahav, in the way in which they do with vessels of silver and gold, shekorim niale, right? And I believe that is a word that means to engrave. So we're talking about engraving. Interesting that there isn't a Yiddish translation of this. Ushlosha gvi'im, so really 3 cups. Boltin mikol kaneh v'kaneh. They stick out from each and every branch. Kaftor v'ferach. Haya l'chol kaneh v'kaneh. So this knob and the flower, right? Something like that. Cup, haya l'chol kaneh v'kaneh, was for each and every branch. Now we said gevi'ah was the cup. So he says that the perach, right? Here we go. The prachim up here. Tsiurim asim ba'kamin prachim, meaning so engraved with the flower. So I'm going to go back again to that other illustration and see what we're talking about. So here we are. So what he's saying is, you can see the attempt here to make a flower. I guess I could make this slightly larger. So there's the knob, right? And the cup and the flower, and 3 of them, right? 3 coming out of each one of these. Now, in this other illustration that I'm referring to, what happens is, the way he's got the knob and the cup is that he's got 3 knobs coming out the sides here, where he's got these places that are indented slightly, and each one of these things with a knob, right? So you have if you can imagine, please, because I don't have an illustration here, of a knob with a cup around it. And as I said, if I can find this for you, you'll see, because that's how he's understanding this. Whereas, and this is, I mean, these are both, I believe, legitimate ways of trying to understand what he's talking about. And because he said a knob, right, and mentioned specifically 3 cups, is why he's got it like this here. And we can see how the branches come out of the knobs themselves. And then there's another knob down here. All right, let's go back into the share, into the text. Going on.
Quick question.
Of course.
Yeah. So does that mean because of the ambiguity that both ways of constructing it would be correct?
Not necessarily. We would hope. I mean, right now it's basically theoretical, and we have to live with that. And there's very often when the Gemara comes to a point where there's no resolution to a disagreement, they use the term teku. Teku. They use that expression, and teku means there is no resolution. It's like the word, they use that word in chess when it's a draw. So the word draw is teku. And there's I think it's actually a little bit of rabbinic humor, perhaps, or traditional humor, that the word teku is actually an abbreviation, and it means tishbi. That's the ta. Yitarates will clarify. That's the yud. Kushi. That's the kuf of teku. V'abayot, and questions, which means that Elijah will come and resolve these questions. So that the understanding is that this will be it when messianic time arrives and we're capable then of building a temple again, this will be resolved.
Okay.
So that's actually an important concept, by the way. So I'm glad you raised that, and actually that is something to tuck into your memory basket.
How do you spell teku?
Taf Yud Kuf Vav.
I had heard this as a joke, but now from an Orthodox rabbi in New York who was very involved, who had a wonderful sense of humor and was very involved in interfaith work.
Yes.
And he had a friend who was a Protestant minister, and he said, look, let's just see, when the Messiah comes, we'll ask, is it your first time or your second time?
I like it.
So that was teku.
Yes, that was teku. A specific application.
It may not have been teku for him, but in terms of the larger reality of everyone, not just him as a Jew, but that it can't be decided now.
Correct.
For everyone. So
it's a good concept. It allows people to remain friends. And by the way, fits in very well with the idea of universal peace in messianic time. Yes. Excuse me 1 second again. Okie doke. Let's go on with this. So you can see that in all this detail, from my perspective, it's absolutely begging for interpretation as to what these various details are supposed to symbolize. And at this point, I can think of a possible place for me to go to, a possible commentary for me to look at and see if, in fact, he does interpret it. And I will tell you, it's the same commentary, and I'm blocking on the name of the commentary, where I realized that the symbolism of the temple and of the priest's garments were all referring to human beings, to various elements of human beings. And the garments of the high priest have to do with characteristics, human characteristics, whereas the temple itself, of course, represents the human body and the attempt to perfect it. So let's go on to Lamed Dalet. Uva menorah, and in the menorah, in the candlestick, arba'a gevi'im. So it says here there are 4 cups. I'll quickly go to the picture again just to clarify. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's well. Wait a second. I'm sorry. Here's the cup. Forgive me. I was thinking of the knobs. So here are the 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, and again, in that other illustration, where he has the knobs inside, sort of surrounded by the cup, then you have the knob which is engraved inside the cup. So just the other one. Let's just go back into the original there. Excuse me. All right. Let's go back. We're in the text itself, right? Meshukadim, right? We said those were engraved with flowers. Kaftoreha, its knobs. Ufracheha, and their flowers, right? And those engraved knobs. Uva menorah arba'a gevi'im, and in the menorah there are these 4 cups. Bagufash menorah, that's in the body. In other words, that central column of the candlesticks. Hayu arba'a gevi'im. They were actually 4 cups. Echad bolet ba lamala min hakanim. One sticks out below the branches. The hashlosha lamala, and the 3 above, just like you saw in the illustration, min yitziat hakanim, from that point at which those branches go out, hayotzim mitzideha, that are going out of its side. So you can understand now that those, just the way you saw it, mishukadim kaftoreha ufracheha, right? So it's interesting that right there, engraved in that way, right? And this is now taken from the Talmud. He says, this is what he says. Look at this. Ze echad michamisha mikraot. This is one of 5 verses, scriptural verses, she'ein lahem echreya, which are impossible to determine their exact meaning, is what he's saying. How do we understand this? Ein yadua, we are not certain. Im gvi'im meshukadim, if it is the cups that are engraved with these flowers, or meshukadim kaftoreha ufracheha, or are we saying that both the knobs and the so now it says pracheha, right? Its flowers are engraved in this way. So this is probably a good place for us to stop today, because as you can see, this next Rashi is long. It's a very long Rashi. Will take us, because in this case, he is going to be taking this from a description of the menorah, I believe in Menachot, in Tractate Menachot, where a great description is given. So we will go to here. We'll pop this in here. And I want, okay, there. And we will place. I'm going to, do you want me to show, maybe do the illustration one more time? We'll see if I can make it a little smaller. There we are. So you can see the whole thing. So, okay. Just trying to get the sense of this flower, right? So he's calling this a flower, but it looks like a knob, right? And there's a cup. Not, it's a little bit of a struggle. So I'm going to stop the share. And if anybody, yeah, David, did you have your hand up?
No, I forgot to put it down. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
I got a question.
Yes.
If I had a craftsman to make what God wanted me on the menorah in gold, what would that cost me?
You know what they used to say? If you have to ask how much it costs, you can't afford it.
Okay.
Well,
Also,
it would also depend upon how large it was, the weight of gold, the
It's
price.
it's
And
a
that's,
talent,
yeah,
whatever a
well,
talent
that
is
kind of,
equivalent to. And of course, the market price of gold at the time, Lisa, as you know, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So
well, where did the gold come from and the jewels that make the ikab for the
I
priests
think
and the robes? And did the why would the Egyptians give them
They,
their gold and their jewels up
they
to
did,
the
they
Israelis?
did. We told they did
well,
because they
they,
wanted to get rid of them so much. They were ready to get rid of them.
oh, so they gave him all that to have them leave?
Yes, I mean, in some
Oh,
ways it was pain.
I
It was
thought it
pain.
was that they took it. Oh, thank you for clearing that up.
No, they helped themselves. They went in and the Egyptians said, help yourselves. Please get out of here. Take what you want and get out of here.
Hmm.
They'd had enough. Yeah, so they brought the spoils of Egypt with them. I mean, not necessarily all of them, but they brought many spoils. And the idea that, you know, in some ways I'm wondering to myself, does that mean that in some ways the Egyptians need some credit for providing some of the materials for the, you know, for the tabernacle, for this deep and great place of worship? So I'm going to stop the recording unless anybody wants to say anything for the record.